We have Officer Chung and Chief McIsaac on here. So good evening, everybody. On behalf of the Belmont Pan-Asian Coalition and our co-host, the Belmont Chinese American Association, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's forum, Building Bridges, Policing and the Asian Community in Belmont. I'd like to, first of all, thank Belmont Police Chief James McIsaac and Officer Alex Chung for taking the time out of your busy schedules to talk with us tonight. It has been a worrying time for Asians in this country. Racist incidents against Asians are often complex because they may not be as obviously identifiable. Thus, they are often underreported. Even so, hate crimes against Asian Americans increased by 149% in 2020 nationally, despite a 7% decrease in hate crimes overall. 2 weeks ago, as we all know, 6 Asian women were shot in Georgia, and we have all seen videos on the internet of elderly Asians being violently attacked. Obviously, this increase in anti-Asian sentiment and violence stems from something more than policing, but the local police are the people that we turn to, or are supposed to turn to, when we are afraid. Tonight, we have the opportunity to have a dialogue with our police to discuss our concerns and how we might address them proactively. Normally, Belmont is a very quiet town, but with the recent murder of Henry Tapia and the recent graffiti at Wellington, I think we are all, as minority members of this community, a little bit on edge. First off, I'd like to ask Chief McIsaac and Officer Alex to introduce yourselves. If you could each say a little bit about yourselves, maybe a little bit about your experience regarding race relations in Belmont, particularly regarding Asians, and also a little bit about what you're hoping to get out of this forum, that would be great. And then Jessica Zhang of the BCAA, and I will ask specific questions that we have collected from our respective organizations. So with that, Chief McIsaac, welcome and thank you so much.
And thank you very much for having me here tonight. And I think this is long overdue. We've always, I think my involvement specifically with the Asian community goes back to, I think it was 2006 or 7. I had a pedestrian safety seminar, and we had an Asian woman that was hit by a truck on Channing Road. And so at that time, I presented the seminar over at Waltham at Waverly Oaks. There was a cultural center over there. And I did about a 2-hour presentation all through an interpreter speaking Mandarin. So it was very, that was sort of the first time that the department, recognized that we had to reach out, to the Asian community. It was to discuss, pedestrian safety, those things. But the other time it came up is we had someone at the high school, a student at the high school that was, dealing with some kind of stress and things like that. And I reached out to our school resource officer and I said, can you please call over to Lexington? I know Lexington has a very, high Asian population. I said, and see if they have somebody in their school system that can help deal, because we were having language difficulties with the families and everything. So it hasn't always been smooth. But the biggest thing that concerns me, we haven't had the only reported incident of Asian hate, and I'm not minimizing by saying the only, was in 2011. And one of the things that concerns me is I don't want anybody to fear coming to the police to report something, or might say, I don't want to come if they're elderly and they might have trouble articulating with the English language. I don't want anybody to feel that. We'll work through anything that we have to, and we're always here to help. And that's basically what I hope to get out of this tonight, is to meet people, to let people know that we're available here for any kind. We'll help with anything that we can help with. That's about it. We want to. I've said my theme has always been, I hate to think that people fear us, and we want to knock down those walls. We're your police department, and you know, we're here for you to help in any way that we can.
Thank you very much, Chief McIsaac. Appreciate that. And I hope that after tonight, you won't have to be reaching out to Lexington for help anymore. And Officer Chung, I was wondering if you could also introduce yourself. We're just very interested in your perspective as well.
Okay, so hi, I'm Alex Chung. I've been in the department for 10 years now, just going on to 10 years. And your one of your questions, what was, so in my experience with the Asian community is that I do use, so I speak Cantonese, so I do a lot of interpreting sometimes. It might not even be for anything, you know, criminal or anything like that. It could just be like a car accidents, you know, one of the drivers might be Asian or speak Cantonese, and I'm able to be used that way. Once in a while, I will go to another community. I think the most recent was in Newton that I helped in a domestic case, and I spoke to one of the parties in Cantonese. Yeah, I don't know if you have any other questions.
I'm just wondering if you had any we're just wondering, like, if you felt like there was any change recently, or if you felt like you were regarded differently than the other people in the
Like in town or while I'm
police
working,
force.
or
Yeah, in town, or
no. In the past maybe few months, I'm not so much worried about like myself. I think sometimes like I'm worried about like my, you know, like grandma or like my mom maybe. Even though I like when I walk around now, I in the back of my head I always kind of think like, oh, is like someone thinking of like punching me in the face right now. So it's, like I think I'm a little more aware of my like surroundings, if anything, and I think a lot of Asian Americans feel like that everywhere, where you just feel like maybe slightly more alert than normal. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you very much for that. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Zhang from the BCAA. She has collected some great questions for you, sort of along those lines.
Good evening, everyone. So I am representing the Belmont Chinese American Association, that we have sent out some survey questions that we collected in the town of Belmont regarding about this event. So the first question that it's probably very related to what Alex, the officer Alex just said, that do you see any recent actions that the Belmont Police Department has taken to ensure the safety of the Asian Americans in Belmont? And in return, how should we Asian American population in Belmont partner with the Belmont Police Department to fight or stand up to the instance that in general in Belmont?
I can take that. I guess we haven't taken any specific actions to protect the Asian community. We haven't really done that with anybody. We like to, you know, treat everybody the same. We haven't had any threats or anything like that that would cause us to do something different, whether it was in our control or investigations. I did speak at the vigil that was two weeks ago, and, you know, to try to reassure people again that we're here, and we hope that, you know, we know each other well enough that you can come to the station, and, you know, you can ask for me at any time. You can ask for Alex, any one of the officers here. There's been a couple of things. I know a few weeks ago we put out a message. I'm not sure if it got to everybody, but there was a scam that was being going around where someone was saying they were calling from the Chinese government, and, you know, they were looking for money and things like that. So, but the other thing that did come from the vigil at last, the vigil the other day, was a resident had come up to me and had mentioned that there was an elderly person that was lost. It was over by like Hamilton Street, and the officers were having difficulty communicating with him. And because of language, he was an elderly Asian gentleman. And this resident had mentioned, about interpretation services. And I said, well, we have services if we arrest somebody, we have somebody who can pick up the phone. But since then, I mentioned it to our community service officer, who has been reaching out to people trying to build up a group of people that would be able to translate for non-criminal stuff. And in the event, in the case Alex isn't around, or if it's Mandarin or something, that we would have, be able to call on a local resident. It could be something as simple as somebody's in a lobby looking for something they lost, or, they might be lost themselves direction. So we're working right now on putting that together. And I hate to say it, but that's one of those, good things that can come from a bad event that brings people together. This event, if we didn't, I don't think if we had that horrific crime in Georgia that we would be sitting here tonight, getting to know each other, like we are.
Okay, thank you. So when you're talking about calls, so is there any a hotline or any phone number particularly that we can reach out to?
Not yet. You can call anytime the 484-1212, which is our general number, or if it's an emergency, 911. And if it's emergency, we have enhanced 911. We'd be able to tell where the person was calling from.
Okay, thank you. And the second question I have is, so it's regarding about our kids at home. So for many of our Asian American families, we have kids at home. And then what would you suggest that we should talk to our school age kids at home when the assault is directed to them, either at the school ground or in the public location?
Well, they should certainly tell the parents. And the parents can tell us, we have, sometimes people think that, even we run into this with people that don't feel well. We get calls from a lot of people for a lot of different things. And we work well with all the other communities and schools. So if somebody, if a student that goes to the Chenery came home and told his parent, said, somebody's using these names towards me, it might not necessarily be a crime, but we would facilitate that with the school. We would, introduce it to the school, work with the school, and they would do the right thing from then on. So it just doesn't have to be a crime. We help facilitate a lot of different things, but any young person should tell their parent, and hopefully the parent would either address it, with us, especially if it was a crime, or they could always address it to us, and then we could pass it off to the school or whatever agency that would best be suited to handle that.
Okay, thank you very much. And another question that we collected is regarding about the elderlies that we have at home. So most of our Asian American family has our parents here to visit sometimes, and they don't speak English. So if they are just walking on the street and encounter these instances, what should they do?
Well, if somebody, I should have prefaced this before. If somebody feels as though there's an immediate threat or they're in harm, they should call 911 immediately. If somebody says something or whatever, driving by, the incident I spoke about in 2011 was a 13 and a 14-year-old students, and somebody yelled Asian slurs at them. And, in that case, they didn't get a license plate. You could get a license plate, you could report it to us. We would do an incident report on it. And we would try to, find the person who said it. And even, as I mentioned before, if it wasn't a crime, we would address it at least with the people, and then, see what we could do from there on in.
So we will have to collect some evidence of items, videos or license plate or anything that you can get at the scene.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm sure, when I say that 2011 was the reported one, I'm sure there's been incidents and people don't say anything. You know, there's a lot of people will, you know, they handle it differently. It might not, you know, a year ago, they might not have thought it was a big deal. And now if it happened today, it would be a big deal. So to people, if they have any questions, they can always call us.
Okay, thank you so much. So Julie, I think I have all my questions answered.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
from the public.
All right. So I have a couple of questions. First of all, just about the interpreters. I know that's a concern that you have. I want to just sort of introduce a little bit about the Pan-Asian Coalition in Belmont, because we have members whose origins are from all over Asia. So not just East Asians, but also from South Asia, Southeast Asia, people from the Indian subcontinent, and people of mixed race, and more. So we cover a lot of languages. I think what we can do is coordinate with Belmont Helps, who I also volunteer with. They have Belmont Helps has a database of interpreters, and we keep track of different languages. So maybe what we can do is encourage people in the Belmont Pan-Asian Coalition to sign up with Belmont Helps. So maybe you can use Belmont Helps as a resource if you have a need for a particular language. Do you think that would help?
That would be very helpful. You know what else would be helpful? So right before COVID hit, we were prepared to do a citizen survey. And it cost me about $500 to have that survey translated into Mandarin. And so even some of our basic forms and things like that, if someone ever would, you know, a student ever wanted to do it for community service hours or anything like that, that would be really helpful to us. I'm not talking about long documents. I mean, just like a couple of, you know, basic things. Even if it was something from time to time, I could put on, you know, a reminder on Facebook or something like that, you know, there's a couple of the smaller forms and things that we have that would be very helpful to have it in different languages.
Okay. We can, maybe you can let us know what you need, and we can try to put it up. Yeah, find volunteers for that. So, so as far as the Belmont Pan-Asian Coalition, we have a little bit of a different slant. I think that there are definitely some of the same concerns about, you know, how can we keep ourselves safe from the incidents in the community. And I think that also because we do have, you know, a variety of people in our group, including people who are darker skinned and may have had unpleasant encounters with the police in other districts. There is also concern about feeling safe from the police. We also have some undocumented immigrants in the group who are afraid of going out in public, much less afraid of calling the police. So, so those are some of our perspective, and you know, we did a very small survey within the group, and I think most people said that they'd had good experiences with the Belmont police, including me. You know, I've always had good encounters with the police, and thank you for that. But there are also a fair number of people who said that they avoid the police as much as possible. So that's kind of this perspective that we're coming from. So my first question is, so as far as I know, out of the 65 employees listed in the police department roster, only Officer Chung is a minority, and I guess that's true. So that's 1.5%, and Belmont right now is 17.2% Asian and 23% non-white. So, and just looking at the recent censuses, that's been steadily increasing. So in 2000, Belmont was 5.76% Asian and 7% non-white. So are there plans to hire more Asian and minority officers, and and what are the impediments to doing that?
So Belmont is a civil service police department, which means in order to be hired by the Belmont Police Department, so there's a test coming up. Well, the sign up date is April 12th. So you would have had to have resided in Belmont since April 12th, 2020 to take the test in 2021. So 1 year prior to the exam, you have to take the test. And then you score well enough on the test. There's a list. The list is usually good for 2 years. So that exam is given every 2 years. And if we're hiring and it's right and you're on the list, we would go. There are no minority lists. There is a language list, but in order to call for a language list, you have to show civil service that over 50% of your calls for service, the people that you engage with speak that language. So as far as diversifying through civil service, it's very difficult. I am happy to say that we do have a little bit more diversity in two candidates right now who are going through the process. They still have to pass the academy, pass the PAT and all that stuff, but they're Belmont people. They lived in Belmont last year. And we only had 4 candidates on the list for 4 openings. So that was it. So it wasn't like I have a pool of 45 people and that's it. It was 4 candidates for 4 openings. And now, right now, we're down to 3 candidates with the 4 openings. And so as far as that's working within the civil service rules, if we were in civil service, we could possibly do more.
Okay, so we have a question from Omawali Stewart, who's saying, do you see the need to alter those hiring practices? And that's what you were just talking about. So sounds like your feeling is that civil service, it predisposes to hiring more white officers.
I've been quite vocal on this while I was going through the hiring process.
Right.
It came up, and I've talked a great deal about it. Other communities, Belmont is a lot like Lexington. It's a lot like Wellesley. We don't have a lot of veterans. A lot of the kids go after college. It's very expensive to live here. So you'd have to be somebody residing, that's between 21 and 32 and is residing in Belmont and wishes to be a police officer. We have them. We have good candidates. Obviously, I was one. Alex was one 11 years ago. We don't generate that many people that want to be police officers in the community.
Maybe I could jump in for a second, Julie.
Sure.
Just to say, Will Brownsberger, State Senator, just to say that this is also a concern of legislation at the state level. We created a commission as part of our police reform bill that would study the civil service process and make some recommendations that would hopefully allow more inclusion and broader based hiring. So that's something that's pending, not something that's happening really yet, but it's something that's taking form.
Thank you, Will. So, given that that's probably going to take some time to change, and we have still 85%. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with math. 97% white force. I was wondering, are there ways that you can reassure our members who have had negative experiences with the police in other districts? For example, I know there are some who felt too traumatized to attend tonight, actually. And I wonder if you have a message for them.
The best way to alleviate your fears is to get to know us. Obviously COVID has physically separated us, but I'm available for calls anytime if someone wants to talk. I said months ago that the biggest disappointment to me is that when we have residents that fear us. We have, Alex is one example, but all of our offices do their very best and to be welcoming and to let people know that we care about them. I have, it's silly, but it's an old rule that I always had. And when I became chief, we had all hands on deck meeting. And we talked about it. I call it the do right rule, where, you always do what's right. If you don't know, you ask somebody, you do your very best. And the third part of that is you show people you care about them. And I emphasize that every day. And the officers here, I read the reports, I read everything, and I think they do an outstanding job. And most importantly, I just came up a couple of weeks ago at a meeting and somebody said, well, how do you know all your officers feel that way? I said, I don't, maybe they don't, but they know how I feel about it. And they know how I would react if we weren't treating somebody the right way. So that's the best way to get to know people. Hopefully when we have a newly renovated police station, I would love to have people in to talk, to meet the officers face to face. And hopefully that's something that we'll be doing, by at least by the end of the year, hopefully. But, anybody has they can call me. Sometimes it can boil down to a simple misunderstanding. I've had people call me and say, hey, this officer seemed to be following me the other day on Beach Street. And then I look in the calls and there was, a loose dog or something running around on Beach Street. And the officer was looking for the dog in yards or something like that. So a lot of times, if you don't communicate, you don't have those lines of communication, you all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're connecting dots based on hypotheticals or what happened in other communities. So we want to be available to people and explain what we do and why we do it. And I think that's the best thing that we can do.
Great. Actually, my next question was sort of along those lines, whether you could explain your policy regarding undocumented immigrants.
So this came up a few years ago when Belmont became a welcoming community. We discussed what we do. Local police we can't not enforce immigration. So we would never, if someone came in here, please come in here if you're undocumented and you think you've been the victim of a crime or some other thing. We're not in that business at all of notifying ICE and things like that. The only time that we ever, and this is even before immigration became an issue, it's always been an issue, but before it became a concern at the local level, the only time if we arrested somebody and they were undocumented, we wouldn't call ICE, because when we arrest people, they either make bail and leave here or they go to the courthouse. And that at the courthouse is where they would deal with people who are undocumented. So as far in the history of Belmont Police Department and moving forward, immigration is not something that we're interested in doing, we want to do, or that we don't even have the authority to do it. You actually have to be deputized by the federal government to enforce immigration, and we would never do that. We have no need to do that here.
So if somebody who is undocumented is afraid of something happening, like if they get robbed or something, they shouldn't be afraid to call.
Not at all. It wouldn't make a difference. And not only if they're the victim of a scam or a fraud, people who are undocumented can tend to make good targets for things like that. They can come here, we'll take a report, we'll do an investigation. There'd be no notification to ICE on that. We wouldn't even know who to call here, I think. You have to Google the number, I guess. But it would, so yeah, no, there's no fear or worries of that at all.
Great. So I have another question. So as far as we have a lot of allies on the call today, which is awesome. And I was just wondering if you have advice, if somebody's witnessing harassment, what to do? Like, like what the thing to do is, other than call you.
Well, I think I think you mentioned it, that video in New York, with, if you witness violence like that, you have to call 911. I'm not going to ever tell somebody to, jump into the middle of a fight and try to break a fight up. And you also, you have to, some people are good at it. They're good at perceiving a situation and knowing what to do. Other people are not. So the best thing to do is, especially in like Belmont, call 911. I am witnessing this, I'll give you a hypothetical. Somebody's outside of Dunkin' Donuts and, they're a person of color, or they're Asian, and somebody is saying things unfairly to them, or if they're just anybody, you can always call 911 and say, I'm outside Dunkin' Donuts and there's this gentleman or this woman and they're yelling at this other person and saying not very nice things. You're not going to bother us at all. We will send a police car down there to figure out what's going on. Because when you start, involving yourself, all of a sudden now it's 3 people yelling at each other, or 3 people, so you would not be bothering us at all if you called for that. We have people, Alex will tell you, we have people call 911. I'm not telling you to call 911 for regular things, but we get 911 calls for a lot of things that are not 911 calls. So 2 people arguing or somebody harassing another person would be a reasonable call for us to handle.
Okay. And Shanna, who is also a volunteer lead at Belmont Helps, has put up the website for Belmont Helps so that you can volunteer to help with translation. So if you are bilingual and you can help with translation, you can input your information at that website and we can call on you if there's a need.
Hey, hi, Julie, could I ask a question?
Absolutely, Yomawali.
Sure. Hi, Chief, I do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to have this meeting with the community. I myself am a Belmont resident. I've been here for a year and I have been renting. And I've only had positive interactions with the Belmont police. So I'm happy to say that. And I generally do have positive interactions with the police, but there have been some where I did not have positive interactions with the police for a number of reasons. And Chief, I do want to say thank you for reaching out and inviting the community into the police station. And I also want to thank you for owning the fact that maybe some outreach that's an area of growth for the department. I'd like to know from you, knowing that is an area of growth and knowing that the Asian American community feels a bit uncomfortable just being told that they're welcome to come in. What else can you do? Would you see any value in having, community functions, as it's starting to warm up and you making yourselves a bit more visible, connecting with the community in other ways, instead of saying, hey, you're welcome to come in?
Absolutely. So what I talked about was, I was sworn in on January 3rd, 2020. And I had all these plans that I had worked on, and then COVID struck. And there's actually, I have a box in my office with things. One was a citizen survey. The other thing was, we've held off on creating a new mission statement because I think the community should be part of that mission statement. And my plan for having the community be part of the mission statement was to have several community meetings with officers explaining what they do, community telling us what they want. That's been on hold. So what I'm doing now and what the other officers are doing too is we're attending as many Zoom things as we can and listen to people's concerns. And, hopefully that we can do those things, and we can get together physically. I know some people, but I only know them from here up now. I mean, I consider, I see them on the street and I say, you're a lot taller than you look on Zoom. So, I think everybody's eager to do that. And, yeah, that just all those kinds of things to get together and talk. You know, our old station, and I've said this a number of times, and this isn't in a negative way, but gave us a lot of excuses not to do anything because we couldn't fit anybody anywhere. We couldn't have a meeting with more than 4 people in any room in the station. Now we have a nice conference room. We have places where we can get together. So I'm really looking forward to that. But you know, yeah, as far as you know, it's been mostly Zooms, but we can always do more. I always, you know, I find myself attending these meetings, and then I'll get emails from people the other day, and I'm like, you know, I talk about that all the time, and I realize, but not everybody's getting the message. So we just have to keep working at that.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, Chief, and your openness and willingness to listen. It would be great, you know, a great next step to just, you know, maybe meet with a smaller group of people from this community to say, hey, and thank you for giving us the table to have the conversation, and here are some next steps that we would like to see as the Asian American community, and go from there.
You know,
So thank you.
I've said this before at a number of meetings, so I'll just give it a little bit of an example. You know, these meetings are huge learning experiences for me and for the other officers, you know. And I tell the story all the time. It was after Michael Brown was killed in Missouri. It was 2014. And we were at the Unitarian Church. And I was standing with then, who was my captain. And this young woman came up to me and said, what do you think about implicit bias? I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm like, implicit bias. And I'm like looking around, and my captain knew a little bit and talked about it. I was like, oh, all right. You know what I mean? And that's how you learn. I mean, that's how, you know, and so, you know, it's a growing experience for an individual. It's a growing experience for the department. And so
Absolutely.
The more of these meetings we have, I always say, respectfully challenge your police department and you make them better. We're a better police department today than we were, at least when I started. And I know a lot of you haven't been around, but 2004 was a pretty bad year for us as a department. I was relatively new in the department. We're nowhere near what we were back in those days.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So we have a question, or actually a comment from Lindsay Rinder, Director at Belmont Public Schools. Are you still on the call, Lindsay? And would you like to?
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Rinder, and I'm the Director of English Language Education at the Belmont Public Schools. Some of you who are my age may know that program as ESL. And I'm here actually with a nice big group of parents from our English Learner Parent Advisory Council. Really grateful to all those parents for helping me know about this event and helping promote it to our ELE family community. And I wanted to answer, maybe going back to Jessica Zhang's question about what we can tell children. And then Julie, you were asking Chief McIsaac also about, you know, what can you do when you're witnessing or when you are perhaps the target or victim of a racist incident or a biased incident. And I just wanted to share some information about what we as a public school system are planning to teach all students to do to interrupt bias. And I want to say too, the best way to interrupt it is for a bystander or a witness to interrupt it rather than the person who is being targeted. Because when you're feeling threatened, it's very hard to think. And it's much easier for a person who is witnessing it. So that might be an ally. It may especially be a white bystander who has the privilege of skin color to protect them from those sorts of incidents, who can be the most important person to interrupt that bias. So we have already done work to help all the adults in our school system know how to interrupt bias. And now we're thinking about how we can bring it to students in student-friendly language. But the basic, and to be clear, this is not for this is not about violence or very serious incidents. This is when you're hearing, you know, a slur or, you know, some of the sort of hate speech that we're hearing around the coronavirus and, blaming Asian Americans, for instance, for the coronavirus, those might be examples. So the sort of 2 steps that we've already taught teachers to do, and we're going to help students learn how to do, is first of all, just saying, what did you just say? Or asking in some way for the like, did I just hear you say? And, did I just hear you blame Chinese people for the virus, for instance? And oftentimes that's enough to make the person say, wait, hold on, maybe I need to rethink what I just said. And then the second step can be as easy as just saying, I didn't like that, or I don't like that, or that's mean, depending on the age of the student, that's hurtful, that's hateful. And again, it's much easier for a bystander, or I'd say also it's more effective for a bystander or a witness or an ally to do that instead of the person who's been targeted. We actually, a parent who's here on the call, Henry He, had brought up to me that we should probably also think of things that we can tell students to say and do when they are being targeted themselves. And that's a lot harder. And it may be that it's best, I'm going to be thinking about it with the ELE teachers because it's especially hard for kids who are learning English still and in an English dominated environment. So we're going to be thinking about that at a meeting later this month. But it may be something where you have to circle back, right? And first of all, make sure that you report it to an adult at school, to a parent, to the police if it's out in the community. And second of all, you may need some adult support in order for the student to be able to respond in a way that ultimately leaves them feeling successful. But that, I just wanted to share what we're doing, and we're very open to community and parent input. I really believe in a strong homeschool partnership, and I would love to hear any ideas from anyone. You can always reach me at the Belmont Public Schools website. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. I just have one comment. So, so Lindsay, you are mostly serves as the ELE students that in Belmont. So not all the bilingual kids that will be in that program. For example, my daughter was not in that program. So I'm just want to make sure that if you do this bystander education, would you extend it to all?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have said that. I also am a, what am I? A co-leader, I guess, of the Culturally Responsive Teaching Steering Committee. So actually what I was describing there is for all Belmont students, ages, pre-K through 12. And so that's work that I do just as a member of the Leadership Council with all teachers in Belmont. And all teachers in Belmont have had training. We talk about it as marking the moment, not just from me and my co-leader, Deb McDevitt, but also from Khalees Warnham, who is has a consulting business and was also a METCO director in another district and is just an amazing speaker. She actually spoke at an event that Chief McIsaac attended with me on a screening of The Hate You Give. And she also did some training with all teachers on marking the moment and interrupting bias.
Thank you.
I had also heard, in the media that it's good if you see an incident where somebody's being harassed to talk to the person who is being harassed. And that's a way of breaking things up. I don't know if that's something that that you've come upon as a possible solution.
That's a great point. I like that. And that's an easy thing to teach young children to do too.
Yeah, just to start talking to them and, to break it up. All right, so we have another couple questions. So I guess Chief McIsaac is saying it is legal to take videos or pictures of incidents.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's one thing that I think makes it so that we see all these incidents is that everybody has a phone, which is
There are cameras everywhere.
there are cameras everywhere. So I guess
Julie,
that's.
I have a
that's it.
question, if I could.
Sure.
So, hi, this is Catherine Bonfilio, Belmont Against Racism, and hi, Chief McIsaac. We've worked together on a lot of things over the years. One of the things that Watertown has, to your point about folks who are undocumented, they actually put out a brochure in multiple languages. I don't know if there's any value to that, but it was basically to say that this police department does not is not related to ICE in any way, and it's, that your safety is most important to us, please, and I'm wondering, we had talked about recreating a similar brochure here in Belmont. I'm wondering from folks who are on this call if they think that that would be useful to have something like that or not, in terms of communicating to the community. And the other piece is BAR has done upstander workshops. We've used improv. We've done them both at the high school with True Story Theater, and we did one about 4 or 5 years ago. We'd be happy to put another one on if adults were interested in doing that. I think it went pretty well because it's not a one size fits all. And when you do improv, you realize that some people are gung ho and get in, and some people are more passive and have a different way of approaching how to be a bystander. For example, we did one example that was in a train, and instead of talking or anything, one guy just went in and put his hand up and walked right in between the person who, he didn't say anything, but he just got his body in there. So we all have different ways of approaching things. It's not a one size, but we'd be happy to try and look into putting another program on. And we also brought urban improv to the middle school, and one of the pieces they did with the middle schoolers was a situation that was involving kids, and they actually were brilliant about intervening in a scene of harassment. So our kids are more skilled in many ways than we think. But we'd be happy to bring those kinds of programs back in if people were interested. So wanted to ask the question out there about a brochure, though.
A brochure sounds like a helpful idea. I don't know if you've considered that, Chief McIsaac.
This is the first I've heard about it, and I just wrote a note. I will call Chief Lund tomorrow in Watertown and see if it's something that I can use. And,
Yeah, it was about 3 or 4 years ago, I think, probably, Chief.
yeah.
Or even just, just social media
Yeah.
announcement or something like that. Because I don't know how many people are going around picking up brochures these days.
Well, we would,
Yeah.
yeah.
An online brochure.
Yeah.
I should have clarified that. Yeah, well, I'm 70.
Pin it to on a board down the center. I'll look at, I'll see what he has and what we can do with it.
Do we have any other questions from the community here? All right. Oh, so I guess I was also going to ask, so how do you record racially motivated incidents? Like, is there a way that you do, and is there a certain way that we have to report them, or?
So people have asked me recently, they said, can we have all your hate crimes in the last 10 years or two, whatever. So what happens is when our officers take any kind of an incident report, there's a box in the, let me bring it up, and I'll, there's a box that you check if there was bias involved. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a crime. It could be, any number of things. And I think there's like there's almost 50 different things you can name it, like anti-Black, anti-white, anti-Asian, Hispanic. It goes on and on, Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, Islamic, Hindu, so, on and on, heterosexual, bisexual, transsexual, all, it covers everything. And so a lot of the things that we've had over the time have been, somebody might have got a call at their house and somebody said something, that that was racist or whatever. We don't know where the call necessarily came from, but the officer took a report on it, and the officer will check the box that says, you know, if it was anti-Islamic, for instance, they would check that box. So that's a lot of what we have. A lot of it has to do with graffiti. We've had, I think it was back probably 6-7 years ago, an officer discovered that someone had put a swastika on the back of a stop sign. So, you know, they picked one of the I think they just have, you know, because they could only pick, the first one they picked was anti-Jewish. They did that. So that's what the officers do. And then when you, of course, when you have a hate crime like we had in January, you know, then it gets, you know, it gets that attached to it, and it gets prosecuted as a crime. A lot of them, we're not able, you know, one of them, because I was going through the list, one of them was somebody was online on playing a video game, and the person that could have been in another state or another country started saying what we would classify as anti-Black things to him. And not all the time is even the person reporting it may not be a minority, but you know, for whatever reason, whoever was talking to them thought they were. So the officers, just any crime, any incident that has a bias to it, they'll check that. They'll check a box, and it'll get recorded, so that when anybody goes back to look, they can pull it up rather quickly.
Thank you. So let's see, Michael McNamara is suggesting that we could drop off brochures at the library. Jane G is asking, is there any team bonding event between Belmont residents and police officers and specific programs for kids?
Well, we have, the thing that comes to mind most recently is we have a summer camp that we participate in with Waltham Police, where it's a youth police academy. The kids that go to it love it. It's not one of, you know, sometimes whenever we get involved with kids, people always worry that we're trying to indoctrinate them or, you know, help them see things our way, so to speak. That's not the case. It's just offers a safe place for the kids to be for the summer. We do the summer camp. We've used to, again, pre-COVID, we would do rad classes for females at the high school, or anyone who felt that they wanted to participate in a rape defense class. We did, you know, we did a number of things. We did youth basketball games, different things that hopefully we're all going to be beginning again in the fall. You know, somebody called me out on this, because some of you may know I run a middle school football program in town. And I was talking about all the ways we contact kids, and someone said, well, that's great for all the kids that play basketball, football, and these sports. What about the kids that don't play sports? And I was like, you're absolutely right. So yeah, we have to work on finding our way, you know, into those other groups and the kids that want to, you know, talk about it. It's funny because sometimes it's like the news of the day will bring us to there. Like I used to go to the high school, and I think the teacher left, but I had a whole presentation on opioids and opioid addiction, and you know, kind of how it came to be, and you know, all this. And now we've kind of moved off that, knock on wood, and you know, we're on a different thing. So we just have to find ways to build inroads into different sub-communities of our community, and then stay there. And unfortunately, sports is always easy because you have a captive audience, you have people, but we need to do a better job of reaching out to all the kids. And whether it's, you know, it could be a lot of different things, but we're exploring that.
Great. Any other questions? Or Jessica, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask? All right, well, I guess that's it. So thank you so much for all of your time, Chief McIsaac, and also thank you so much to Officer Chung for giving your perspective as well. And thanks very much to all the participants here This was a great discussion. I hope that we'll keep in touch and we'll get you the contact information for the Belmont Helps Translation service that we have.
And, you know, I thank you for having me here and Alex here. And just if anyone has any questions, you know, chief@belmontpd.org, or you can go on our website, send me an email. If you have any suggestions of what things maybe we should be doing, you know, let me know. This is where the best ideas come from. You know, one of the things that makes law enforcement such an interesting profession is we deal with so many different things. Right? Every day I come into work, there's something new to deal with, but that's also can be one of our weaknesses because we get sidetracked from, you know, what we're doing. And then someone says, hey, you once said you were going to do this. And I said, oh yeah, I haven't thought of that in 3 months. I've been doing this, you know? So always I tell people, just keep jabbing with that needle until we respond. And, you know, yes, anything anybody can think of. We have great people in this community and a lot of, you know, bright people that can make us better. So we're willing to listen.
All right. Well, we look forward to working with you some more, hopefully out in the community in person soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
you, Julie.
everyone. Have a good night.
everyone.
Thank you.